Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the National Library of Israel's Reading Room series and the next installment of this particular sub-series in which we are interviewing and hearing from museum curators and collectors from around the world. I'm Yoel Finkelman. I'm the curator of the Judaica collection at the National Library of Israel, and it is my pleasure and honor to be speaking with Marcella Ansaldi today. She is the chief curator of the Jewish Museum in Venice. And I hope that this conversation in the next hour between the two of us, and do feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat so that we can discuss them on mic. But the goal here is to get a little bit behind the scenes. Under today's circumstances, it's so difficult, of course, to travel, and I'm sure that all of us, at least those of you who are not currently living in Venice, would have loved to have spent some time in Venice over this summer, but it doesn't look like that was in the cards for any of us. And certainly, when visiting Venice with so many attractions, the ghetto, Jewish history, the Jewish museums, the synagogues, the sites are something that cannot be missed. It's part and parcel of any trip to Venice, certainly a Jewish and a heritage trip to Venice. And here we have this wonderful opportunity. If we think about museums and we think about education and we think about ways of communicating complex messages to visitors, then Venice is both an opportunity and a challenge. It's an opportunity because Venice brings out the imagination in people, simply setting foot in the city with its picturesque canals, which is beautiful bridges, with its easy to get lost map, with its beautiful buildings. You feel history alive with every step you take. You get a sense of the Renaissance, you get a sense of the military history, you get a sense of the grandeur, you get a sense of the art. And so a museum in Venice, and certainly a Jewish museum in the ghetto of Venice, addresses an audience who's primed, an audience who's ready to learn and ready to internalize things. But there's also huge challenges because Venice, which attracts under normal circumstances literally millions of tourists a year, and diverse tourists, learned Jews, learned non-Jews, people who know something about the ghetto and Jewish history, people who do not, people who speak multiple languages. How do we get across the complex, almost internally contradictory history of Jews in Venice, a place where Jews were both accepted, often as equals, but also the first ghetto in Europe, a place where Jews reached the height of culture and the height of intellectual activity, whether it's through printing or Talmudic learning or Kabbalistic mysticism or modern literature, but also the place of destruction during the course of the 20th century. And so if we were simply visitors to Venice, we might go into the museum and see what we see, but now we have an opportunity to talk to Marcella Ansaldi and to hear behind the scenes. How do you construct this complex story for such a diverse group of visitors? So it really is my honor to be speaking to Marcella today. She is someone who was born and grew up in the Jewish community of Venice and then went internationally to serve in multiple museums after her training in conservation and museum work in Venice itself, in Turkey, in Paris, and really around the world. And then in the past few years, as the Venice Jewish Museum has been working to renew itself, to rethink its mission, as part of the larger project of celebrating and commemorating, and I use those two words deliberately, 500 years of the establishment of the ghetto in Venice. And so I would like to introduce Marcella and really ask her to begin by telling us something about Venice as a city, Venice as a location for Jewish life over the course of history.
Thank you very much, Doran, and thank you to everybody. Yes, I'm Venetian. Yes, I'm Jewish. Yes, I'm a rare Venetian Jew, because now the ghetto is much more connected to the past than to the future. And this is the reason why I'm there, because I want, with the other member of the Jewish community, a future for the Judaism in Venice, a future for the history of art that we have inside the museum. And we want to share with you now this trip in Venice. So for someone that never visited Venice, it will be a good opportunity, I hope. And you are right, it's not easy to live in a city without car. It's not easy to live in a city with a lot of tourists. But we are so connected to this area of the ghetto, and we love a lot this part of Venice, really. Nothing about segregation, nothing about restriction. We are proud to live the ghetto, but we don't live in the ghetto. We live in the area, in other districts in Venice. We, as a Jewish community, only 2 families live in the ghetto, Jewish family. So I share with you my imaging of Venice, because it is something that I can explain with words. I start speaking not exactly of Venice, but of Italy, because before the Second World War, the Italian Jewish reality was completely and rapidly changing. And by the end of it was completely different one. Some already important city and center of Jewish culture are Padua. On the left here, this is the synagogue of Padua, and this is the synagogue of Ancona. Lost
Marcella, I think you have not shared the PowerPoint. Can you share that screen, please?
Oh yeah. So I'm so sorry, but other cities close to Venice were completely destroyed. This is the reason why we have an important collection in our museum and in other Italian museums.
Marcella?
Rome. Yes, I start now. I start with you.
If you could press the green button and then select the PowerPoint.
Yeah, the green button.
With the arrow.
I'm here.
Beautiful.
Okay.
And just remember to press the chalice button. Yeah. Thank you very much.
So this is on the left is the synagogue of Padua, and on the right is the synagogue of Ancona, all Renaissance synagogue as in Venice. But we have a community and we have a Jewish life. In other places, unfortunately, in Italy, nothing is the same. And this is a magnificent place in Piemonte, in Casale Monferrato. And we had on the north of Italy a lot of little community, very, very active, with a lot of important rabbis. But other place is completely destroyed after the war, like Pitigliano and Moncalvo. At the ghetto of Venice is this area that you can see, and he was founded in 1516 as confined place, but after Napoleon's army opened the door of the ghetto, and Venice and the Jewish of Venice were free from 1797. Throughout history, the member of the Venetian Jewish community decreased progressively. And this rise concerned about the preservation of the rich cultural heritage of the Jewish tradition.
Marcella, several participants are asking you to speak a little more directly into the microphone.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It's probably better.
Yes, yeah. Very much
okay.
So.
Okay. And you can see the area of the ghetto. Here, there are the synagogue that is enclosed in the museum. And after a bridge, there is two more synagogues that is able for service now. This is all the area around the canal that you can see, because the limit of the ghetto was the canal, because it was a natural place to confine people. This is the height skyline of the ghetto. And you can see on the left, the 1955 was the year when the ghetto of Venice was founded. It was the first ghetto in Italy, the first museum, in Italy, and now nothing is changed. This is the Italian, I'm so sorry, this is Italian synagogue. I'm terrible with the, okay. And this is the Italian synagogue, the German synagogue. This is the museum. And this is the same synagogue nowadays. This is me. So,
I can't help but comment, Marcella, about the diversity of the communities. And at least from what, in my readings and learning about the Jewish community of Venice, the idea that one community actually contains Ashkenazic and Sephardic and North African influences and Spanish influences, and different communities, sub-communities that are on the one hand part of one larger community, and yet maintain their own unique practices and their own identity.
There were 5 nations, we call nation the community at that time, with different languages, different minagim, different everything. And now Venice was a melting pot of culture. There were Armenian, Greece, Greek, German, and probably the ghetto is the same, was the same ambience that Venice was. And probably the idea to share tradition with other Jews was not exactly the idea of Venetian immigrant in Venice. But you know, the place was so little, because the Campo di Ghetto is really a piazza, a very small place, and they start to share habits, to share minigame. Now we use the Spanish minigame, and in the Jewish community we are 450 persons, and no one speaks Spanish. But we use the Spanish minag. And it's, I'm sure that it's a good example of life, common life, the Ghetto of Venice. And languages too. We have a Venetian Jewish language. My grandmother spoke the Venetian Jewish language. Nowadays, unfortunately, I understand few words, but it's completely lost.
Well, I can certainly say from the National Library perspective, we have books going back to the 16th century that contain Judeo-Italian,
Oh, yeah.
including a lovely Haggadah Shel Pesach, Passover Haggadah from 1609, with beautiful, beautiful woodcut images that became very influential. And one of the versions was published in Judeo-Italian. And that really speaks to this idea that Jews were both separate and connected.
Yeah. But I would like to come back to the history that what we lost or not, we don't know. Because, for example, this synagogue that is the Vittorio Veneto, is a city close to Venice, synagogue, is now at the Israel Museum, and the other is in the Nahum Museum. This is probably is the reason why we are so proud to have 3 synagogues, not only musealized, but we try to live inside the synagogue, to study inside the synagogue, and to share with visitors the Jewish thinking. And because to study together, it's a very good experience. The visitors here in Venice are more Christian than Jews, and they know nothing about Judaism. They think about Jewish as ancient Roman, something of the past. Now, we want to share not only object, but history too with this visitor. And this is the idea for the next and future museum, to be connected with people, to share with them history not only of the past, but of the present and for the future. I think that you can see the synagogue. Now you can see the Canton Synagogue. This is a synagogue in the corner that in Venetian language is Canton, in the corner of the canal. And it's not only very nice, it's a synagogue with many relations with the families who lives now in the community, or we are in connection with them. So this is the reason why it's not only very nice object, because they are nice and survived during the war, but we want to share a model of commune life in a city, a model of multicultural experience in a city. And the ghetto will be this place, we hope so. And the new museum want to work in this direction. So for visitors, you know, when to meet a Jew is a very interesting experience, it seems, because they ask immediately, but are you Jewish? And when the guide during the tour in the museum answer, no, I'm not Jew, they are very disappointed because to meet Jews is a folklore moment. But I think that it's interesting to understand what they want, what the visitor decide to see. And this is the reason why we want to try in the new museum, but I did this experiment during an exhibition, to put a lot of mirror in a room, because it's an answer for me to this question, how to do with this heritage, only to show the heritage of the past and the shining Judaica and the very nice book? Not. I think that mirroring in oneself in another, it will be a very important experience. If you are not Jews and you try to become during the visit something other, it will be a good experience.
Can you say more about that challenge? Because you're painting a picture on the one hand of not wanting to fall into stereotypical images, into folklore, into nostalgia on the one hand, and you want to talk about a living Jewish life, what things were like on a daily basis, what this space, this ghetto looked like in the past, and what it felt to be there and live there on the one hand. And on the other hand, so much of this is a museum. So much of this is not the living location of a thriving Jewish community, but actually the location of a Jewish community that's struggling and is trying to find its way and trying to find its way to the future generations. And so, how do you avoid the stereotypes and the nostalgia while still functioning as a museum, which and especially in a city that almost begs for nostalgia?
It's an interesting question because the idea to reverse everything in the museum, it's very dangerous in a way. But all Jewish museums are the room of the Brit Milah, the room of the Bar Mitzvah, the room of Judaica, and this is a little bit, it's easy, but probably now it's boring for new generation. And it's much more better to show a very nice, for few people, a very nice object for few people. And for expert and for very height elevated person, but for young people, I can't see the group of young people, the class, and the scholar that arrive in the museum and they want absolutely to go outside as soon as possible. And I try to do the opposite, to involve young generation as not only with their languages, but with their imagination, and to try to do something like a simple mirror without nothing where you are in front of you. And probably after a few minutes, you understand that you are not there for no reason. And another problem in Italy is the, we call problem, but for Italian director of Jewish museum, it's a problem, is to be too connected to the Shoah time. And young people who arrive in the museum want, in a way, to understand more, but if they don't know what happened before the Shoah, why the Jews are not only the persecuted person of the Shoah. And
that's, of course, a challenge that I think all Jewish museums and educational opportunities are struggling with throughout Europe.
Yeah, yeah.
How do we tell this Jewish story in a way that isn't just the Holocaust?
Yes, it's true. But in a way, I'm very, very surprised when they ask, the visitor ask obsessively, in a way very, very obsessive, about the Shoah. Like,
again, Marcella, could you move a little bit closer to the microphone?
Oh yeah, it's probably my voice, not the microphone. This is another game about identity. We ask, and it's one of the future room for the future museum. We ask to people to compose their own identity with name, with choice, with the future, what they want to do. And we did that, and it was a very interesting and funny experience. So hate speech, it's one of the most important mission of our museum, because young people use word without idea of signification, of effect. And through the idea of Lashon Hara, that it's very, very Venetian word we speak about in the community, in Italian, non fare shonara. And we want to share this idea of the importance of word, a single word. And this is one of the idea for the future. This is the ghetto of the past. And the idea to connect more people, visitors, to the present is to do a new timeline from now to the past. So people understand better what is now the life in for Jewish people. This is our future. Well, and this is close to the ghetto, and we asked to a gondoliera to do a tour for young guy, and explain the history of the ghetto during the tour in the gondola. It was very, very funny, but it's a very important experience for young people because it is connected with something nice and happy and strange, not boring at all.
But I
Yes.
think that's part of the point exactly, is that if you focus exclusively on the ghetto as ghetto or focus exclusively on the Holocaust, then your story is nothing but tragedy. And if you focus only on the heroes, the success stories, the famous Jews, then you tell a story that's also false in the other direction. And the challenge is to combine the celebratory and the special with the tragic and with the day-to-day and the commonplace.
Yeah. But unfortunately, when visitors arrived in Venice, want to see something of very romantic, very touristic, very special, magnificent church, and we have only 5 synagogues. There are more than 250 churches in Venice, and we have 5 synagogues. We are a minority, but we want to share this idea of minority that is completely different from Michelangelo, or Tintoretto or Canaletto. Our history is a different history, but we can compare the work of art that we have in Italy with our work of art inside the museum. But we can speak about something other. Books speak about something other. And I know that people want to come to visit. This is the inside the Canton Synagogue, and they want to visit the synagogue, and they ask, "Oh, which is this is a 16th century synagogue? Americans are crazy for that." But it's very important for us, but it's not our goal to show only architecture, to show only place. We want to speak about the idea of the past for the future. This is the German synagogue, if you want to come to visit it. And this is the Canton Synagogue. And this is one of the most interesting objects of Judaica. Many people ask us, but do you have a lot of king for this crown? And after all, you understand that the objects are more close to the idea of European culture than of Jewish culture, evidently, not in Israel, but here it's very, very clear. Your microphone, please.
Lori has just asked a good question that can segue into a topic that is very important for us to cover. She asks about the plans for the museum's future and the history. And I wonder if you could tell us something more about the plans for the restructuring and the rethinking of the museum.
Yeah. I show you a part of this project. It's an architect. All the museum have a reverse timeline. The entrance have a place where people understand that they are inside the ghetto, and they are inside the place, the more ancient place of the ghetto, because the German synagogue is the oldest building in the ghetto. And after that, this is the architectural project. We work now, we start on October. We work now in the ground level, and we organized a new entrance security filter. We have a security filter, unfortunately. We'll have a cafeteria, a kosher cafeteria, that because it's not easy to find a kosher meal in Venice. And a very interesting bookshop that we have, and a library, because my office is inside the archive and the library of the Jewish community. We have an archive from 16th century to nowadays, with all piece of history of different nations.
So almost, since this is a library event, I almost have to ask a follow-up question about the archive and the library. Can you tell us more about how that archive came to be, what kinds of materials it contains, and how it might be used to reconstruct the history of Jewish Venice?
We have two different parts in the library. One of the archive that directly come from the different nation. So the German nation, the Levantine, the Spanish nation, they put inside material completely different, and is our archive is not so well done to understand which kind of material. But you find manuscript with the permission of the Serenissima Republic to the different people of the community, and all kind of restriction and all kind of opportunity to work. And the flat that they were inside the ghetto had some census list, and you can understand if Moshe ben Levi was a bakery or a medicine, and you can understand where he lived. So it's really a life to study. And the other part is ancient book. It's more religious book. We have some important book because Venice was a very important printing house place. And it was forbidden for Jews have a printing house, but a good collaboration with the aristocratic people give the opportunity to have very, very nice printing house. So we have manuscript. The oldest manuscript is a Mishneh Torah, and we have many study and lesson from the rabbis of the past.
So perhaps you can tell us a bit more also about how you hope to fill the permanent exhibition area and the temporary exhibition areas. What kind of educational and cultural messages do you want to get across, and how do you get them across in a museum setting?
The idea is have the same languages to explain all exhibition, the permanent and the temporary exhibition is the first level area. Now we start immediately after the ground level, we start with the renovation of this area. And we want to share experience in this way. The visitor have to do a physical experience when they enter, and at the same time an intellectual experience. So if you try to do something physical, smell something, or have the idea of an humid place where the Jews live, and in the same time you have a intellectual point of view, probably at the end of your visit in the ghetto, you are not a new person, but something more close. And the third level is the synagogue area. We want to connect the three synagogues as it was in the past. Now you have to go up to the German synagogue, come down, go up to the Canton synagogue, come down, and go outside in the Campo di Ghetto to enter in the Italian synagogue. At the end of this important work, the three synagogues will be connected. So about the room that we have a more precise idea is this idea of lend me your eyes. It's when you go out to the synagogue, to the German synagogue, the first room that you find is a room called Lend Me Your Eyes. It means this is my experience and you're try to do the same. And you can see that here we have a Jewish flat because we have a 16th century flat that is exactly as it was, and the visitors can enter in and to understand what it mean to live in a not good condition nowadays too. And we want to show the idea in the last room that the visitor visited, that we were never slaves, because in Venice in 16th century, as in many other places in the world, slaves were common, but Jewish arrived not as slaves, but as a minority that discuss with the Serenissima Republic their own state of citizens. I think that if I can answer to some questions. I'm happy. I really hope that all of you come to visit me in Venice, and we can discuss a lot about what is our common future, because I'm sure that we are really connected with the future of Venice, because it's a very difficult city. It's a very difficult reality, but I don't like to think about Venice as a place where people are only foreign people and not Venetian and not Jewish.
So we certainly are looking forward to the time when Venice can once again be an attraction for visitors and residents of all kinds, and not the way things seem to be running at the moment. I want to share at least some of the questions that have come up over the course of the evening and open it up to the floor. I will read some of these questions. If you have other questions you'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. Several people have asked about a timeline and some information about when the new renovations will be are expected to be completed. But what I'm really interested in at the moment is Mina Lee's wonderful question about the relationship of the museum to the local Jewish community. And this touches on a number of things that we've been talking about before, about nostalgia and about a living community versus a static community in a museum. One could attend the synagogue services, she asks, on Shabbat, on the Sabbath in Venice, and feel like it's a museum event. And do local residents feel that they're somehow part of the museum, part of the show, part of the tourist attraction?
Third question, when we finish the work? We start on October and we'll finish in 3 years if we have money. Second, the problem of the show, yes, is correct. Is correct, because not during coronavirus, but usually many people arrive, many visitors, many foreign people arrive during service. They enter in the synagogue because it's funny to see the Venetian. We are a minority as Jews inside a minority as Venetian, because it's a really difficult to live in Venice, and this is the reason why many people go outside. And but yes, in my opinion, we'll lose a little bit the idea of the hospitality during the service.
A number of people have also asked about cooperation between different Jewish museums throughout Italy and throughout Europe. It almost seems that every city and every town has a Jewish museum. Certainly Venice, with its storied history, is a wonderful place for a museum. How do these different museums coordinate with one another? How do they share messages? How do they build on each other to make the totality of these museums greater than the sum of their parts?
Yes, most with the Italian museum, we share a lot. We have a group of Italian museums and we work together. Now, for example, we had the European Day yesterday, yesterday was a European Day of Jewish culture. And with other Italian museums, we share everything, really. We did video together, we share study. With other museums, is a little bit more difficult. Why? Because we are museums of the community, and they are national museums, as Amsterdam is not national, but it's a very big museum. And in the past, we were small brothers as little museums. So it's much more difficult to share with them. We hope to share more because in the future. But we are completely private. We have no support with no one, and this is not easy. About another question that you did, that is relation between the museum and Jewish community. In the past, the Jewish community thought that the museum, the Jewish museum, was something for Goyim, not for us. And I was really, really disappointed for that, because it's important to study and to have documentation and to understand what is a museum. And now it's much more better because I'm inside the community and I'm the director of the museum. So the museum is a part of the community.
So last question before we close out this wonderful session. Several people also asked about researchers and use of the books and archives that are stored in the Jewish community and in the Jewish Museum. Has this material been digitized? How are you restoring it and caring for it? And are there researchers who come to work and do research on Italian Jewish life using the resources in the museum?
No, unfortunately, it's not digitalized, and I'm working inside, and I turn my my chair, and I can study, and I hope that many other students arrived, and I'm absolutely at your complete disposal, because I like to share this patrimony. So it's if you write me an email, I can do everything for our future and our study.
Well, I do want to mention just in passing that the National Library of Israel is coordinating with several of the Jewish communities in Italy, including Venice, in working on cataloging all of the ancient Hebrew books that are part of the collections in Italian Jewish communities. And we do hope that in the next year or two, there really will be a complete catalog of the rare Hebrew books scattered throughout Jewish communities in Italy.
Yes, yes, thank you. And I know that it's very important for us. We need young people. If young people want to come to live in Venice and work with us, we are very, very, very happy.
So I want to close out this evening by thanking Marcella for this wonderful virtual tour, both of Italian Jewish history, the ghetto, the museum that was, the museum that will be. And for give us an opportunity to see behind the scenes, not only the final product of the museum, but the thinking that goes into it and the way in which the location is used to help support the educational activities that are so central to all of our museum work. And so once again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Marcella Ansaldi, for this wonderful presentation, and I invite you to further events in the National Library of Israel's Reading Room. Please do see the National Library of Israel site for more information about upcoming events.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Thank you, and Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Thank you very much. I'll open the microphone so that whoever's in the panelist room can open their microphone and thank you personally. Thank you, and see you in our next event.
Thank you very much, Marcella. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Shana Tova.
Thank you, Shana Tova.
Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you. Shana Tova.
Arrivederci.
Ciao, ciao.
תודה רבה.
Thank you. תודה רבה. It was lovely.
Grazie lei. Buonasera.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova from Venice.
תודה רבה. לei, grazie.
שנה טובה גם.
Grazie mille. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
בריאות. Grazie le. Shana Tova.
Thank you so much. It was fascinating.